I got to get this win. I got to save face. We're terrible. Of all the teams at the World Cup, we are underachieving the most.
The U.S. attack struggled to just create much of anything in this match, and that's a massive issue going forward, is they still have not found the three up top who work best together.
If it's me coaching this team, I am strictly working on pressing on it and getting my goals from defense, because I think we can defend any team in this World Cup.
We've seen that the technical aspect of the game has grown so much, and that's something the U.S. has to be able to develop. Why weren't we really trying to develop that aspect of the game from the beginning of the year? Crystal Dunn was the player that the U.S. was trying to target. Move her into that midfield. She's been playing there all season long.
But what does Dunn do really good? She defends the top of the box when Portland attacks.
Welcome back into Straight from the Pitch. It is the day after the U.S. ties Portugal in their final group stage game. Joined as always by Scotty Schweitzer. I'm Anna Witte. It was a 3 a.m. Eastern time kick. Before we get into this game, because there's a lot to dive into, did you take a nap, Scotty? Did you go to bed and wake up? What was your strategy? And really, what's been your strategy all World Cup? Because you've been watching all these games real time.
I have been. For my job is we're on break right now. We don't start back up till the 7th, and I coach at a youth academy. So I'm on my own schedule of doing individuals and stuff like that. So basically I've had no schedule. I've been super, super tired, and then I go about my business. But for this game, next week we start. So I've been trying to get my schedule a little bit more set. But for this game, I went to bed early, took care of the dogs, took them out, got everything taken care of. Went to bed early, set the alarm, and woke up for 2:30-ish, I think, listened to a little bit of the intro to it, and then got ready and watched the whole game. And haven't slept since.
I was going to say, I decided I'm actually on the West Coast for this game, so it was a midnight kickoff, and I went to bed, took a nap on the couch at 11. I think I took a 40-minute nap, and then I was good to go. I got blessed with that, but I'm not blessed with Saturday's 2 a.m. kickoff.
I'll say if I was on the West Coast, that would have been good for me because I would have drank a lot of beers.
Yeah.
So I probably would have been a little drunk at midnight, and then I could have watched that game, and maybe it wouldn't seem so bad.
I had some wine before the game, and that's where I went wrong because I got tired. I was not trying to take a nap, but here we are. I ended up going to bed, got good 6 hours of sleep, even after that result. Now that we've slept on it, we've seen what everyone has had to say. We've listened to some post-game from the coaches, from the players. The starting 11 is what we talked a lot about before heading into this match. And head coach for the national team, Vlatko Andonovski, made 2 changes. Rose Lavelle got the start, and Lynn Williams started over Trinity Rodman. I liked those changes. I think Lavelle needed those minutes, not coming off the bench, starting in the 11. However, I would have loved to seen Ertz in the midfield get Cook some minutes on the back line, especially now that Lavelle will be missing the round of 16 match. But what did you make of the starting 11, and how was the first 5 to 15 minutes of continuity? Because this team, they didn't make any changes really in the first 2 games of the group stage.
The way we've been playing, and now that we've seen 3 games, and granted it's 2 games of the same lineup pretty much, and then 1 game with a little bit of couple changes, it really, to me, doesn't matter who you throw out there. In a sense, and I know people are going to write, oh, so-and-so's better. A lot of people have favorite players, and they, no matter what that player does, they can't do any wrong kind of a thing. But that lineup, and again, I'm a Lavelle fan, so I'm glad that she got in there, but I'm also she was on a minute restrictions, and by game 3, she's at 90 minutes. That seems a little odd. I've never been on a team with a player that could do that.
True.
Or any medical staff that ever did that. Let's get 45 here and 45 here and then 90. I've never seen how she could make that jump like that. So whatever, we're not in the training room and we don't know all that stuff. But as far as the lineup, I thought Lynn Williams did pretty good compared to what Rodman had been showing us, but it was a lot of the same. That's what when I look at this team and the team we brought, when you bring in players, I don't think you're going to see much of anything different, just a different version in a sense of the same thing. Fast, speed, a purely one-on-one attacking kind of thing on the flanks. In the midfield, we have Haran trying to facilitate with another 10 trying to run at players, and then we have a 6 who I really don't know who you would put in at that 6. That maybe Ertz, but she plays it a little differently. She doesn't play it like a true 6, I don't feel. she would do it differently.
But
But
wouldn't
obviously
you
just sit there and hold.
wouldn't you have liked Ertz to get those minutes in the 6 and allow Alana Cook on the field? Because Andy Sullivan was not getting it done in the midfield, and just putting somebody else there to see what they do. You can make a substitution in the 45th minute. I just don't think Sullivan can handle that responsibility right now, and Ertz is the only other option.
I totally agree. We've been saying it for months. So like no one can come on and say, oh, all of a sudden Sullivan's bad and Anna and Scott don't like we've been saying it. We've been saying it since we started talking about the World Cup episode 1 or whatever it was. And I agree. Once we lose Lavelle, you have to know, okay, I'm not going to take Lavelle out because she's got a yellow, because she can't play next game, because I got to get this win. I got to save face. We're terrible. Of all the teams at the World Cup, we are underachieving the most in my eyes. So as a coach, and I tell everybody as the coach, I don't listen to the media, but good God, Lynn Williams, that's what everybody was asking for, Lynn Williams. And all of a sudden she gets the start. So Vlatko, you do listen. You are listening to what people are saying. That's obvious. That is 100% obvious. But yeah, I agree. You got to then make a change. And like, what are we going to do? Because we said it last episode. I don't think we're going to play great, but we're going to get through. And that's really a huge part of the World Cup, is getting out of the group stage and getting into it. But we don't got time to mess around and hope for 3 more games to get our shit together. Sorry for cursing, but then we're going to play. So like, yes, you had to move. Do we go to a 3 back and push it? Like England's gone to the 3 back to make adjustments for an injury. Japan did it as a tactical adjustment. Like teams are making adjustments on the fly. Coaches are doing these things in the World Cup, and we are just throwing the same thing over and over. And then his change is a player here, a player there. But not like there needs to be a change. You're going to put Ertz up in there. You're right. Then Alana Cook has to get on the field, because I don't see Sonnet playing in the back as a back center back. I mean, she was in there. They went to the double pivot. Then they went to 5 in the back. They gave us 3 in the back centrally, but it was like late in the game and you weren't prepared for it mentally. And then she almost gives up the goal that hits the post. She's in bad positioning, reaches out, lunges at it. So like, and I'm sure people are going to hit back and like, oh, Alana Cook can't be on the field. Sonnet, like, I got it. She's your favorite player. You're from the same hometown. I mean, she's not doing anything on the field. I said it before the World Cup. Rapinoe's a bad pick. I don't care if she's the greatest leader, then make her a coach. But what she's been doing on the field has been atrocious. It makes us look bad.
I saw the tweet last night, and I don't remember who tweeted this, but I think they made a fair point. If you are going to have Kelly O'Hara, and she made a substitution late in the game, so she really didn't play in the match. If you're going to bring her to the World Cup, bring Becky Sauerbrunn. If you're not going to use your bench and you trust certain players to be leaders, why isn't Becky Sauerbrunn there? I don't disagree. I think that's a completely fair point.
I mean, just watching the game and what the camera angles give us.
Right.
I saw Kelly O'Hara coaching way more than I saw Vlatko coaching last night. She was the first to talk after the game to the group. She was telling players where to go. And then, like, to me, like, that's a great teammate. She's always first up to give the drink. Like, here's a 2-time World Cup champion, star. At one time, maybe the best outside back in the world, who is now older and she's doing, by all accounts, what she can to help this team win. Whether we believe she should have went or shouldn't have went, doesn't matter. She's there. And then her being a teammate, like, she flew onto that field at the end. And she was there basically to kill minutes, in a sense. But she flew out there thinking, maybe I'll get us a goal. Maybe I can do something to help us, to get us good for the next game. So to me, is like, that's great. But like, we need that from the biggest leader, Vlatko. And he's ho-hum about it. Like, ho-hum, no big deal. Like, it is a big deal. It is. We're number 1 in the world. We almost lost to number 21, and 100%. And granted, we're seeing it all here, but Portugal, give them some credit, man. They played. They didn't play scared against us. They played soccer. They played good angles. They were in triangles. They did great passing. They worked it. They were the better team, and they deserved a better result, to be honest. But no one's giving them credit. It's just how bad we are. And I'm not saying we weren't bad. We're terrible. We're playing terrible soccer, but they were good at the same time.
The US, the style was really hard to figure out. It was clearly just trying to be direct to find Alex Morgan or Sophia Smith up top. I thought Lynn Williams looked really out of place. She seemed pretty confused. She was tracking back defensively, but whenever she got the ball, she looked extremely uncomfortable and didn't know how to link up. Granted, the US attack struggled to just create much of anything in this match, and that's a massive issue going forward. Is they still have not found the three up top who work best together. However, looking at the stats and going back to the holding midfield position, Andy Sullivan probably had one of the fewest amount of passes in this match for the US. And the six is something, Scotty and I talk about a lot, being the quarterback of the team. They are the ones facilitating play, switching the point of attack, creating the buildup. And when your six isn't living on the ball and your outside back in Crystal Dunn is the one creating the most chances, that's where things get a little iffy. And we saw Portugal, the way that they almost scored the goal. The US got super lucky with that post. Portugal was able to exploit our midfield so easily. Now that the US has 4.5 days to fix that midfield, quite frankly, to fix everything on the pitch, where do they start with the midfield and how do they start making small adjustments so that they can be competitive against what looks like will be Sweden?
I think they're going to go to a double pivot. I really do, which is
Yeah.
a shame because this is not what that team needs. I think he's going to use the Lavelle yellows as an excuse for the double pivot. I just think like there's bigger problems than just that in the sense of the game too. Like we said she shouldn't have been there. She's the six, and let me tell you something that really stood out to me last night is Sullivan was taking corner kicks and free kicks. Why? And don't tell me because she can play them good. Because no, it seemed like nobody else wanted them because Lavelle usually does, or Rapinoe does here and there. But like she was taking a lot. Like, excuse me, and I know that we love Sam Coffey, but that's her thing. That is her thing at Portland, is taking free kicks, and they score tons of them off of them because she delivers such a great ball. Now I got Sam Coffey, who's not, in my eyes, as good of a player and definitely not as good as a server of the ball in there. Like, if we're resorting to just scoring on free kicks, then we have really dropped to a low level in America on the women's side of soccer. Like, our problem is we can't break teams down. We haven't found the right three up top because we can't even get the right three, the right ball to them. And like I know Lala said last night, some pretty degrading remarks towards Crystal Dunn. Listen, you can't all of a sudden, when somebody has a bad game against a pretty good team and a great tactical, all of a sudden not be the fan of theirs and talk them up so good for so long. Listen, Crystal Dunn's problem was the same thing Emily Fox was having problems with. They couldn't find the passing lanes. Portugal had done such a good job, but when they pressed as 10 and they pressed together. And that's what teams have learned to do against us. We usually play in pre-games or scrimmages, whatever you want to call them, friendlies. We play the worst teams and we win 10-0 and everybody thinks we're the greatest. Well, we played Ireland, who didn't get one win in the World Cup. We played Wales, who didn't go to the World Cup. They showed us how to play against us. Vietnam gave up a whole bunch of goals last night to a team that can play soccer. We only got 3 goals against them. And yeah, I understand we missed, but it was the first game. Vietnam was kind of finding themselves. Their defense wasn't as good as it had been past us. So, like, I think our biggest problems is we don't really know how to play every brand of soccer. And I use the Japan-Spain game. Listen, I still think Spain's the best soccer team. I don't care that they lost 4-0. I really don't. Japan, though, did make it a great tactical adjustment and said, look, we're playing against a possession team. We're a possession team, but they're way better than us at it. So we can't do it. If we do it, they're going to kill us. So they sat back and they defended, put 5 in the back and went to a 5-4-1 to cover all the lanes so that only Spain could pass around them. And when they got them into situations where the angles were tight or the spacing was tight, that's when Japan would try to press. And if they could get a straight breakaway, they would. If they couldn't, they just held it and kept possession because they can. And then when they couldn't keep possession, they kind of went long, inched up the field, took away space, got more ground. They played a game of field leverage, basically. And then they were clinical in their finishing. So, like, when I look at us, we are athletic. but we can't play the small game to get around the Dutch, to get around, my guess is we're going to be playing Sweden, to get around whoever we come across, because no one's going to play and let us be out and open and free, because that's our game. But we haven't taught our players the different types of games, how to play, how to sit. If it's me coaching this team, I am strictly working on pressing on it and getting my goals from defense, because I think we can defend any team in this World Cup. But we have to say, listen, they've got England's good. They can knock the ball around. If we try to play with them, they're going to walk through us. So I think that's the adjustment I make. And because I'm making that adjustment, I'm putting some athletes on the field. I'm putting Ertz up in the midfield. I'm bringing Alana Cook in and saying, look, you turn off for a second, I'll sub you out so fast, I don't know, it'll make your head spin. But I'm not putting Sullivan in there because nobody's passing anyway. We're not doing any passing anyway. I put Smith up front because I put Smith, Rodman, and Lynn Williams up front and say, girls, just attack defensively. Attack, show, cover, run. And when you're all ran out, we got 5 subs. I'm subbing in 5 players. And we're going to just keep running at teams. Not running at teams with the ball. We're going to play without the ball because it seems like teams can outpossess us now. So we're going to have to change our tactics for this certain World Cup.
Yeah, tactics has been the biggest thing that I have found really interesting, that Andonovski hasn't changed much of anything, even from the beginning of January. We know that these national teams don't get a ton of time together. So when they do, it's so critical to work on different aspects of the game. We've seen WSL take off in England and the amount of talent that they're producing, how well England has done in the World Cup by changing their style of play. But also, we've seen that the technical aspect of the game has grown so much, and that's something the US has to be able to develop. Why weren't we really trying to develop that aspect of the game from the beginning of the year with the amount of time that we've spent together? And I think with the US moving forward, those are the things that they're going to have to work on, is making sure that they're connecting some passes, because just constantly going over the top, if we're not going to use the substitutes, if we're going to start Morgan with Smith, which is another issue I have, we're not going to find the results. Morgan and Smith, I think that Smith has outplayed Morgan in this World Cup. Obviously, she's scored goals in the Vietnam game, had the brace. I think moving her centrally, giving her a little bit more freedom and more confidence, knowing that she can start there, taking Morgan off the field and allowing Smith to develop and play with Rose Lavelle. I guess not Rose Lavelle anymore, but Sanchez in that role. I mean, those two players are friends off the field. They have a connection as well. Put them in a position to thrive. I think Andonovski has hurt this team, and we can't just constantly, it's not just blaming the players, but it's also blaming the coaching staff and how they haven't set up these players to have success in this system. So not only is it a tactical decision in the style of play that the US continue to beat and try and play this direct style of play, but it's also the players they're playing together. It just isn't working, and they haven't used the time wisely that they have together to figure out what works well together. And I will say that the US, we have likely the most, what do you call it? Most
Dynamic players?
No, it's just like resources. The United States probably has the most resources compared to other federations, which means we should be able to play different styles of play together. And the fact that they haven't shown that in other countries like Portugal in their first World Cup, England, Japan, all the other countries that you've named as well, Scotty, have been able to make those changes, shows that we're starting to not digress at all, but just showing that these countries are catching up and we have no answer for it.
Thank you, Anna, because I'm going to go on this one.
Okay.
First, I'm going to go at Vlatko. You are correct. He has made no adjustments. And a part of the problem is, and I watch a ton of games, NWSL, MLS, England, any game that comes on, Italian League, women's, men. Andonovski did a lot of scouting in the NWSL. And the NWSL, I love the league, reminds me of the EPL. It's fly, it's go. Everybody's attacking. It's amazing. And there's tons of talent.
That's okay.
And that's great. It's a great league.
Yes.
But it seems like he didn't go around and said, hey, let me go to this league in England and see how they play. Because the players out of this league are really showing well in the World Cup. McCabe's showing unbelievable for Ireland. She showed great for Ireland. So it's like he only saw, oh, look, Rodman does great in the NWSL. Sanchez does great in the, but does that translate to the Japanese league, the English league. Listen, Lavelle went to Man City, and I know, listen, she fights injuries her whole career so far, but she wasn't a starter at City. And even when she was healthy, now granted, you're missing a lot of times because of injuries. She's 100% healthy. It still didn't mean she was starting. It's a different league. That doesn't mean Roosevelt is not good, not great. It's just certain leagues, certain players just don't get the fit for and feel for. And here's a World Cup where it's a long tournament. And that's why in the past with Jill Ellis, we had these horses, they ran, and she subbed, and she subbed. And every lineup was different. And at the end of the month, good God, there might have been a better team still last World Cup, but they just couldn't run with us anymore. They just couldn't fly up and down that field with us anymore. And because it worked, everything was good and everything was good enough. And the Lawlesses and the Carly Lloyds now, they were saying how, oh, we're still number one, but they let them catch up. So like these players here, listen, when I got to college and pretty much out of college, my game didn't really change. All I did was get better at understanding my game and the types of games I had to play to win games. But like we're going to start trying to pass now, that's not any one of these players' games. Maybe Sanchez, in and out. Horan, who really has never really played in America, went at right from college, right from high school to PSG, and now she's at Lyon, played a little bit in this league, showed she could do it, but she really, really gravitates to the European League and plays great. The problem is, same as all the people tweeting and all the people on Instagram blaming Vlatko, which he needs to take his blame. He's the World Cup coach. He should have realized this when he got it and changed his tactical style instead of thinking we could just run on teams. So that's his part. The other part, I bet you 60% of the people writing all the things that they had to say and badmouthing all these players are youth coaches. Do a better job at the youth level. And that is the truth. And teams have been catching us for years. I said a couple years ago, the club here locally is going downhill. They're not teaching the players what they need to at an early enough age. They have technical ability. They have athleticism. But these coaches just want results, wins. And at the youth level, kick and run works great. And they don't teach how to pass and where to go and why they're doing it. This year, I was coaching a session of boys, and then I asked the girls, they're not even being taught, 10 years old, 11 years old, pressure cover balance. Like, how do they not know pressure cover balance? And when you look at it tenfold, it's showing up. I'm not saying Crystal Dunn, Emily Fox, these girls don't know pressure cover balance, but they don't know the game as good as Spain, Japan, Germany, Sweden, Italy, Argentina. They don't have what we have athletically, so we can beat a lot of them. But watching the brand of soccer going on the field, this World Cup, our women have looked like the MLS. They look like how the boys play. I thought when the men didn't make the World Cup, not this cycle, the cycle before, I thought that's a good thing for U.S. soccer. We're going to make some changes. We're going to do some things. We're going to make it better. And we've gotten better on the men's side. But the girls, because we were winning and doing good enough was good enough. Oh, look, we're still number one. We used to win 8-0. Now we only win 2-0. Oh, now we're giving up goals. Oh, now it's close. We almost didn't get out of our group. Thank God for a 6-inch post because they deserve to beat us. And if they beat us, we don't get out. But now, oh, everything's okay. We're good. And everybody will badmouth and it's Vlatko's fault. Like, to be honest, who else? And we've mentioned names, but really, who else would have done anything here that Vlatko could have brought in? This is who he has to pick from. He doesn't create the players. The youth systems create the players. Mm-hmm. There's tons of players who don't get on teams because they're not fast enough when they're young. They're not big enough. They're not strong enough. Around here, you don't know the right person to know that person to put you on the top team. And players are being wasted. Good soccer players are getting wasted. And then these big, strong, fast players think, oh, I made the top team. These coaches know what they're talking about, but we can't play a good brand of soccer. And that's where, to me, that as I'm watching this World Cup, tenfold, man, 10 years later, bam, hit us. Here we go. And that's ECNL teams, that's GA teams. There was an academy. Then the academy got folded and disbanded because I guess it didn't make enough money for U.S. soccer. I don't know. You know what I mean? There's all these different leagues, but what are we doing? Like, are we really asking? And that's not every coach, but there's so many coaches I see in the youth game. It's like, oh, I won today 26-0. Like, what did your team learn winning 26-0? Like, they didn't pass, they didn't move. I think Tony Meola said on one of his tweets about what he was watching. He was watching a bunch of athletes,
bunch of basically against a bunch of really good soccer players. Portugal was the soccer players. We were the athletes. Like, he said it way better than I'm saying it. I'm prefacing it, but like, that's exactly what we were watching.
Mm-hmm.
We were watching our NBA superstar athletes playing soccer, and we looked out of place in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then to blame, like, oh, Crystal Dunn looks like she doesn't know how to, quiet, Lawless. She doesn't know how to beat this attack, this press.
By
She's
herself.
never seen it before. Right, all doing it by herself when I got 3 forwards looking to get the baton pass to them.
Yeah.
All looking for breakaways. I only got 3 in the midfield, and Sullivan's nowhere to be found because she don't really want the ball.
Yeah. No, exactly. Sullivan showed that. I mean, you look at the stats too, and the U.S. were outpossessed. And that doesn't mean a ton for the U.S. because when you play really direct, sometimes the possession numbers waver and they're not going to keep the ball. And they only completed 300 passes. To go to your youth comment and how we need to continue to develop at that stage, I think you make a good point in the sense that different players develop at different times in their lives, and you have to be patient. You look at the NWSL and how they're signing so many young players. North Carolina just signed Riley Jackson, who is 17 years old. And I'm not saying she's not a great player. We haven't been able to see her play. I think it's awesome that the NWSL is doing that. However, you have to be patient with those types of players' development. And at 17, they may be a lot better than they will be when they're 26 years old. You're just not sure, but you can't just continue to look in those glasses or in the lens of this player is who she will be at 17 always and forever. And I think that's something that sometimes coaches do, and they continue to lean on those players to develop. Also, I was talking to a former college teammate yesterday about watching the game, and ironically enough, I'm moving, and she had asked me about this like women's league that she plays in and was like, would you ever play in the midfield? As a kid, and this is on me, I never watched the game. You always drove it home. Damon always drove it home that we should be watching the game. And I personally didn't watch it to the level that I should have. However, now that I call games and I watch a lot more soccer, I was like, I think I could play the midfield. I wouldn't be the best at it, but I've learned so much watching the game than I ever have, and I would be able to hold my own. And like I said, that's something that you at my youth level driven home, but a lot of players, coaches did not drive home watching the game. And now that we have streaming services and everything, you can watch any soccer game whenever, however, whatever. Everyone has a cell phone these days. Pull it up. And I just think, like you said, that is something that hopefully will translate positively for the United States, is getting young players watching games now that the NWSL is more accessible. MLS is growing. You know, these national team games are growing. I'm not sure how we got here, Scotty, but I think you made a really good point with the youth system in the States, and hopefully that continues to develop. And with Crystal Dunn, I think she's still an outstanding player. They used her way too much and they leaned on her way too much. And there's only so much. This is 11v11, not 1v11. Crystal Dunn's not going to win the game for us. She's not going to continue to punt the ball up the field because Portugal figured that out. Players are smart now. Opponents are smart now. And I think this was a huge struggle. We've mentioned Sam Coffey, but I'm going to go to Ashley Hatch. And I watched her game against Gotham in the Challenge Cup this past weekend. Washington beat Gotham 4-2. Hatch was a part of every single goal. She scored 2 on her own. However, she had a phenomenal pass into the midfield that set up another player. And then she had a great pass into the 6 that gave Chloe Ricketts a goal. Hatch is a player we should have brought to the World Cup because she can do so much more than score. And nobody else in the attack for the United States has proven that. Sophia Smith tried to put a few balls into the attack. They weren't on the spot. And I know that we're not going to like backtrack and say who we should have brought, but that's something that really stuck out to me, that Hatch has done a really good job of using these Challenge Cup matches in the NWSL, proving why she should be on the world stage in New Zealand and Australia right now.
When Hatch was here in Carolina, she worked a little bit at Next Level, and I very brief little conversations with her and Darian when they would work, but she was a real good student, Hatch was, of the game. And I think part of Hatch's problem is a lot of people in America, coaches, especially at the youth level, they use only the eye test. So like if we just looked at the US team and just watched them, you'd be like, oh, that Sophia Smith's the best player. She just looks smoother than everybody. It just looks effortless when she plays. So you think she's the best player. When you watch Hatch, you're almost like, is this girl even athletic? She's got like a weird gait. She runs kind of straight up. She stands straight up when she
Skinnier,
plays. But when you
not
watch
bigger.
her, like she knows when to become the false nine. She knows when to be the target. She knows when to drop into the midfield. She gets tons of assists, which a lot of forwards do not get assists. And I don't mean like the wingers just whipping balls in and people getting their heads on them. She is playing people into space. She puts it right on the correct foot. But when you watch her, because the first time she did a couple demos, I was like, this is the girl they're all talking about, maybe got rookie of the year. And then you go out and watch her play and you're like, oh, she puts it all together when she gets on the field. And talking about when players develop, I personally think, and I thought she had a very good World Cup, and she made her team way better than they really were, is Denise O'Sullivan. I think Denise O'Sullivan is the most complete soccer player in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Complete. So don't get it right when you read back and tweet us and say, she's not the best player. I didn't say the best soccer player in the world. I said most complete. You need a right back, she could play it. You need a center back, wouldn't be her best position, she could play it. She can play the 6. She can be an 8. She can be a 10. And she could probably be a false 9. And if you had to stick her out wide to kill some game, she probably wouldn't lose it and give you a lot of crosses. She's the most complete player. She is the star of Carolina. She is our engine in Carolina with the courage that we got from Houston because they released her. Like you even had her in the league. Mm-hmm. Houston, you had her, and you didn't think she was good enough. And that's every coach's right to pick and flow with players that see the game similar to them. And that's the other thing is, what was Carolina pick, people? Oh, last to come into NWSL. Sean Nahas, he put a team together by himself, it seems to me, because he picked players that he wanted to coach, that played his style, and now they're in second. I don't know how many of them will make a World Cup team ever, but I'll tell you what, they're going to challenge for this championship. They're going to challenge next year, and they're going to challenge until Denise O'Sullivan retires or some of them get older. And it looks the way he's doing it is those players now are going to take the young ones, teach them what they know, and the team's just going to keep going. And they've built a culture, and that's the youth problem is its culture, not just bad coaches, which they have enough of. Yeah. There's also good coaches, but these good coaches are sometimes connected to the clubs, and the clubs have a terrible, terrible culture because the whole thing's about making money. The best players don't always make the top teams. Shoot, I just read Zlatan Ibrahimovic's, he gave a quote the other day about how bad soccer is America because he was like, my kids, I had to pay $3,500 for them to play soccer. And he's like, and I'm in LA. I take my kids to the park and there's 100 Spanish kids better than them that can't pay $3,500. They're American. They just live in LA. They're the ethnic groups of LA and they're all over the country. There's poor kids that can't pay for the ECNL, the GA, and all the clubs that they have to play for. So we lose them. We lose those players because that's the way the game is now. And now we're looking at it. Our men, they're doing a lot better, but a lot of them play in Europe. Our women are now being caught up to by other countries who have finally put resources in. And the resources still can't touch ours. But because these players have a better hunger and a better desire, and let me tell you, even though the resources have just gone in, just like you said, those players watch soccer. My daughter is a phenomenal soccer player. She's only played a total of 12 months of club soccer because she watches games every day. She has to. She lives in my house. She played for her school team. She was the captain of her team. She was the best player on her team. And that's not me. That's not me or dad. That's come and watch a game. And those were a whole bunch of high top club team players that she was better than that are playing 4 days a week, games on the weekend. Who knows where they're traveling to? My daughter watches games and plays in our backyard and can compete with any of them because she knows the game better because she has to watch it and learn it from the television, not just being told what some coach wants to set up his team is. Like I go to the club games and everyone's playing a 4-3-3. Like how is that possible? Like you play and teach based on your personnel, even at the youth level. So you have to teach, hey, you play like this, you're good in this, you play a 4-4-2. And then as they go and grow and get older and understand their roles a little bit better, you change formations. So when they get on the national team and get to a World Cup, it's not a 4-3-3 every single time. Like watch, Spain will make slight adjustments. England made adjustments today, and it was amazing. They made adjustments to cover their holding midfielder,
who just got injured. But what they did was they put 3 center backs in, moved their outside backs, pinched them inside to help their midfield. And James was, good God, the greatest player I've ever seen play soccer today. All because of a formation change and a shift. Didn't tell the players to play different than who they are. They just took a different role based on the system they were playing. And they could do it in an instant. England did it in an instant. They hadn't played like that. Shoot, I don't remember the last time they played like that. If we come out of our formation, we went to a double pivot and then the 3 center backs, and it looked like a disgrace. And back to Vlatko. The last time he didn't sub, he said, it takes players a couple minutes to get used to the game. Then what are you subbing them in this game for? And then you sub a couple players at the very end. There was no minutes left. So, like, how could they ever get used to the game? I understand you're killing the clock, but, like, you're hypocritical on your own statements, Vlatko.
Yeah.
Like, you're not subbing because you didn't want to lose the flow. Well, if we tie, we go through. And except for the one chance, Portugal didn't have tons of chances against us. So why not just keep status quo like the Holland game, the Netherlands game? Like, you made all these changes because you listen to social media too much. And this isn't your team coaching. You need to coach your team. And then if you do terrible, take the hit. If you do great, take all the love. But come on, man. But I mean, I knew I was going to get worked up today watching that game, but we need to be better. We need to be way better. And that's top to bottom. That is top to bottom.
I think the consensus of this, if you are a youth player listening to this who has raw talent, or quite frankly, if you're athletic, whatever, watch film. Just watch film. You'll continue to develop and learn the different styles of soccer, and it'll allow you to translate pretty easily into different teams, different systems. And that's something that the US has to watch a ton of film before they play Sweden. They have to figure out what Sweden does well, so defensively they can break that down, but they also have to pay attention to what they can beat Sweden in, what their deficits are, what they can't do well, so they can beat them in the attack. And I just don't think the US watched enough film against Portugal to figure that piece out. You mentioned substitutes, Scotty, and I want to go back to this game specifically. Here are the subs that were made. Sophia Smith came off the field for Megan Rapinoe in the 61st minute of play. Lindsay Horan came off the field for Emily Sonnet. And then Lynn Williams came off the field for Trinity Rodman in the 84th minute. And then Alex Morgan came off the field for Alyssa Thompson. And Kelly O'Hara came on the pitch in the 90th minute for Crystal Dunn. The biggest thing for me is, why are we taking Sophia Smith off in the 61st minute to put Megan Rapinoe on? Where was Ashley Sanchez in these substitutions? Why are we putting Emily Sonnet? I know they moved into a double pivot to save the game. Why are we doing that? You guys are the United States. What did you think of these substitutions that were made? And moving forward against Sweden, how could Vlatko be a little bit more tactically wiser, if that's how you want to say it, about substitutions he's going to make in that match?
So, I don't know what Vlatko's going to do.
I know.
The subs, like, I get all of them in a sense, except for, you're right, the Rapinoe, like, on Sophia Smith's worst day, leave her in. If there's change, is going to be Rapinoe. Listen, Rapinoe wasn't good the last game she came in, so you can't use that. And if you're using trainings, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. What trainings are you doing that really are translating to what the game's going to be like? Because if I'm Portugal, I was like, oh, hell yeah, Rapinoe's coming in. We can almost not defend this side, in a sense, because we can make up the ground. Like, her passing was off, her touch was off, her dribbling's off, her free kicks were off. But the one that got me, like, saying, like, this is just, he just does whatever. I'm supposed to make a sub, so I sub. I don't know. He just change a position. I'm going to do this, but I don't know. Because when he subbed in Alyssa Thompson, and I don't care that there was 1 minute left, Alyssa Thompson came in for Rodman. I mean, for Alex Morgan.
Yeah.
Alyssa Thompson is the smallest player on the field every single time she plays. So if there's a minute, if there's 30 seconds, there's a weird chance something crazy could happen. We don't need our smallest player playing the 9, because when she went in, she did not switch to one of the wings and then say, hey, Rodman, I know you're not really a 9, but good God, you're big, you're strong. You might be able to get your head on the ball if we throw one in here. Like, Thompson's not going to win a header. She might be able to beat a player, but the way Portugal was playing, they were real super compact with their 2 center backs and their 2 they were basically holding center mids, both playing pivotal roles of getting the ball and playing out and also defending together. So like there was no space in there for anyone to do anything tricky with the ball. Put Thompson on the outside, let her run down the flank and whip one into Rodman, and Rodman can throw her big 6'1" frame around and see. But it's like he's just like, and I know they're going to come back, oh, he's just killing time. Yeah, but there means there's time. If you're killing time, there's still time left for us to try to get a win. And it looked quite early to me that we were very happy with just tying and going through. And I understand it is the World Cup, but we're going to get to it, I guess, in a little bit. But that's why the reaction is still happy on the sidelines after the game. Listen, you know you played bad. You know what else you know? You're still staying. You're not going home yet. You can, things can change. Sweden can come at us if that's what we play and think they're better than us and try to get into a running game, and we can win 4-0. It's not going to change that we're not really that good at certain types of styles of play. But then everyone will be like, oh, we're back. We're number one again. And we're not. We're not number one. We're not the best. There's better teams to watch. There are better teams that play soccer better than us. So, like, his subbing to me is just like, if I don't sub this time, they're going to say something. Like, why not Fox come out? Why not at the end of the game not put Huerta in there? And I'm not even a fan of Huerta, but you know what she does do? She plays a good long ball.
Yeah.
And even if you're not playing it to somebody, you're killing all that space. You're getting it further away from your goal. And she looks to do that, where Fox and Dunn look to dribble. Dunn plays midfield year round at Portland. Fox is a focal part of the attack with the courage. Like this game, they were just basically a flat back four. They very rarely got forward. Very rarely. And when they did, Portugal was smart enough to know where they had left. And they had two fast players up top with the two Silva girls who made Dunn and Fox a little bit nervous when they got it. You could see the way they defended. Their feet got happier, where they normally they know they're every other game they're athletically more gifted. Well, here were two fast, agile players, and we fouled a lot. And it put a little bit of the only one who wasn't real nervous around him was Germa. Even Ertz got a little nervous as she got locked in with those two. And that's what you have to be aware of. Like Portugal knew every one of our strengths, every one of our weaknesses, and they did not let us play with our strengths. They didn't. They knew that's exactly what the game was going to be like. If they had a chance, it was going to be like that.
I think Portugal proved that if you throw off the US and take away their strength, they are going to fall flat. There were multiple times that Ertz continued to dribble in the pressure that the ball came from. You cannot dribble. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. Quite frankly, it doesn't take anybody but a sports fan to know that you cannot dribble where the ball came from, because that is where the opponent has numbers up. And I think with your point with Huerta is a great one. I think even if you put Huerta on the right, where she has that long, great service with her right foot, move Fox to the left. Crystal Dunn was the player that the U.S. was trying to target. Move her into that midfield. She's been playing there all season long. Get her on the ball and allow her to facilitate, or maybe get inside the box for where to cross it inside. There's other tactical changes that Vlaco could make outside of just a like-for-like situation. Move players around the field. Not the double pivot. That's not what I mean. Don't do that. But I think Crystal Dunn could live in the midfield a little bit more for the U.S.
Yeah, I just think and again, it's just me looking at it I'm not looking at the U.S. saying, okay, we're going to pass through somebody. We're going to work it. We're going to move them around. We're going to keep possession in order to move them and then attack where their weakest player was in the shift or whatever. It's not going to happen. But what does Dunn do really good? She defends the top of the box when Portland attacks. A lot of goals come from Weaver playing them back because she comes late because that's her role, or just defensive clearances that come to her and she gets goals on because of her prowess as an attacking player that she's had her whole career from youth to college, and now she's moved into the back because she's on the national team. You got to understand players' mentality and how they're going to play, and that's a job as a coach. And to be honest, that's the national team job, coach, because you cannot always just keep going over all these different tactical. So you're picking and choosing players that you think are going to fit your system, that you want to coach with the talent that you have, with the personnel that you have. And I think that's why I say Vlaco to me he's a very safe coach. Like when we all go back and saying, people are going to say well, you should have took Coffee. Yeah, but before it, everybody was saying I should have took Sullivan. Like he picked all the safe picks. No one's going to only now because we're playing bad, but it's still like you're going to have your Carly Lloyd, who to me seems like she's got a problem with some players, and going to badmouth all the players, and it's all the players' faults. And it's like there's a whole bunch of people at fault here. Listen. One of the most aggravating shots of the whole game was when it went up into the sands, and I got Cindy Parlow-Cone sitting back like she's in a lounge chair. Foudy's making jokes. Fawcett's up there. Mia Hamm's the only one that looks like let's throw her on the field. She looks like she's super pissed off about this game. Like it just seems like that's what I'm saying. It's from the top to the bottom, and that's from Cindy Parlow-Cone to a rec coach in Texas, North Carolina, wherever you want. Like we all have a job to do. To every college coach, because look at all the colleges that have players in this World Cup. Like we got to do a better job. We have to do a better job teaching the game. And we have to do things, and like you're right, make players watch the game. Make them watch the game. They're on TV for a reason. Like this has been an amazing World Cup. Amazing World Cup. Great games. And we're playing like this. And that hurts me as an American soccer fan. That hurts that like we're not part of the positive talk. We're all the negative talk. And rightfully so. We're rightfully so the negative. But that's not like that just didn't happen this World Cup. That has been a process that we have put in place a long, long time.
Exactly. That is the biggest key in all of this is leading up to this World Cup. There was no real change and there was no effort to change. And I think what the US has been able to do in the past is continue to bring in the same players and play in the same style because opponents couldn't match their athleticism or their tactical abilities. And now these other federations are able to match those athleticism and those tactical abilities. And that's why the US isn't able to do what they do. And I wonder in some ways, like Vlatko Andonovski is playing the style that the US has kind of always played. This really isn't his style. This isn't his game. A lot of these players have been here well before Vlatko. And granted, there are a handful of new talented players, but those players have been molded into the system that US soccer has always played with the women's team. Would you agree with that? Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Like we make it to the CONCACAF finals and we win them at certain ages. And then we make it to the World Cup finals at the 20s and then we lose in the finals. But we didn't lose in the past. We won 8-0. And don't get me wrong, the other teams weren't as good. So the teams are getting better. But we've been saying it's okay. We're still number one. We're still winning our games, our friendly games when we play. Good God, I don't know who.
Wales.
We win 7-0. Right. It's like it's a joke game. But these teams are getting better. These countries are getting better. Players are getting better. And then certain players, they come to the U.S. to get that physical brand of soccer, not because they're good at it, because they need to learn it. And that's where it's like we don't do a good enough job at the younger levels to understand not just mentality, personalities, characters. Like a lot of these players need to like England. England could be crying about all their injuries. They're not. They're just making changes. France could be making excuses. They're not. They're just plugging along, plugging in new players, new this, new that. Listen, again, Spain's my favorite team to watch. Man, half their best players aren't even here.
Yep.
And their two center backs, who might be their two best soccer players, two center backs, they're not even here. They got a third string goalie in. They got backup center backs. Listen, I know Japan won 4-0, but Japan couldn't even touch the ball against them, except for here and there. And then they got, good God, Endo's was amazing. And their finishing was clinical. Like, if I'm Spain in the locker room and say, okay, next time we're going to change up our defensive schemes a little bit better, even when we're in possession, and there's no way they're going to hit 4 shots and score 4 upper 90s, perfect shots, goals every time. It's like not going to happen. So don't lose any hope. We're good.
Yes.
We're good. We're going to play the same way. We're going to win again. Like nobody said after that game, like, oh God, Spain's the worst. Same as like, look at France made their adjustments against Brazil and made Brazil, who still were very good. Just France had them. They had them contained. They knew what they were going to try to do. They knew where they had to be more clinical defensively. They knew all these things. We look like if we step on the field, we got this game. We're going to win. Look at the suits they made for us. Like, just to me, like, let's be better at soccer and stop worrying about all the other stuff going around.
Let's just be better at soccer.
You mentioned a great point, and before we get there, I want to touch on Alyssa Nair hasn't been tested much in this World Cup, and I think if we play Sweden, or quite frankly, whoever we play in the round of 16, that's somebody who's going to be tested more, and I'm interested to see how she deals with it. And because she hasn't had a great club season with Chicago, quite frankly, the team hasn't had a good season, but she's let in 33 goals. I wonder how that mentality is going to translate into the round of 16. So that's something I certainly have my eyes on going into Saturday night. Head into what you touched on is a lot of the off the field stuff that happened off the game. And the Fox crew had some comments about how the US was signing autographs, they were dancing. The reaction was Kelly O'Hara leading the group. Do you think that's justified? I think those comments are justified in the sense that you basically lost to Portugal. You allowed Portugal to potentially beat you, and you guys land in the second place in the group standings for the first time since 2011. Not a great look for the US not being first. I don't think if I were a leader on the US, I would have been happy with the dancing and with the signing of autographs. That should have been a collective coming together in the locker room and figuring out the adjustments that need to be made before Saturday. Having said that, everyone has their own opinion, and they have their rights to have their own opinion on how people should handle those situations. So based off of what everyone said, how Vlatko Andonovski addressed the team with all of that stuff, what would you say about it? Do you agree with me or not?
I partly agree with you.
Okay.
So my thing is, I think why some of the angst or anger towards it and everything is because we've been so ho-hum. Listen, we beat Vietnam 3-0 and we missed some chances, but we didn't look good. Then we play the Netherlands and we tie, and we don't look good in that game either. Let's be honest. That game will look worse than the Vietnam game, and they really at times were like, oh, God, if we get a team that can maintain possession the entire game, we're in some big trouble. And there are teams that are playing like that in the World Cup. And then we come to this game, and Vlatko's a huge part of the problem. He's like, oh, I don't listen to anybody, blah, 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 this and that, ho-hum, ho-hum. So then we lose, or we tie, and we're through. So I'm not going to be one of those players. Like, I'm not going to be happy. And I always remember when I played, I hated signing autographs after I lost. But to be honest, that's why we play. We play to entertain. We play to win, yes, but there's fans that traveled all that way.
That's fair.
To come and see us play. So sign autographs. I'm not going to be giggling over there. I'm not going to be smiling. And I'll say, look, I'm not taking selfies today. I'm sorry. I'll sign your shoe. I'll sign your shirt. I'll sign your stupid phone. But no selfies today. I'm disgusted. And if anyone says something stupid to me, I'm sorry, but I'm not in any mood to be joking around and dancing out here. That is what I agree with. The way they handled their business is what they need to do that. You need to sign autographs. You're having a bad tournament. That's not these fans' fault. So you sign your autographs. You do your due diligence in that part of being a professional. But you're right. They were like the happiest in the world and this and that. And I know, like, maybe because some of it's throwing it in our face, but like, I saw a thing the other day. What was your first thing you bought with your first paycheck? And they're buying like, oh, I got monsters. Like, there's people out here just paid their whole year's salary to go to Australia to watch you knuckleheads play like this. Like, and you're all happy. Don't be happy after a game because now I'm broke. I got to go back. I probably lost my job because I've been here a month. Like, fans are crazy enough to do that kind of stuff. And then it's just some of the interviews after, like, you know, we got through. That was the job. Like, somebody step up and say, this is not good enough. This is not good enough from us. This is not good enough from this team. We are letting down not just our fans. We are letting down the Mia Hamms, the Kristen Lillies, all the players that came, Michelle Akers, every player that came before us. We are letting them down. They put us ahead of the path. They put us way up. All we had to do was keep maintaining that pressure of moving forward. And we didn't. We didn't. Good enough became good enough. And now good enough ain't good enough. And we're seeing it firsthand. And again, the worst thing in my eyes, and I'll be cheering for us, but the worst thing is if we win this stupid thing now. Because then there's going to be like, oh, what a bunch of great characters. We're not going to win it with great passing. It's not happening. It's not going to happen. So, like, maybe this is what we needed to get back to being the best in the world. Being the best, finding every great player. Everybody do a better job. Youth coaches do a better job. college coaches do a better job. High school coaches do a better job. Leagues do a better job. Scouts do a better job. Pro coaches do a better job. You're going to take these young players. Well, now it's on you to get them on a World Cup team. You're taking a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old. Could Jaden Shaw have done something better?
Yep, that's fair.
You know what I mean? Like, we all have to do a better job. Like, those don't put, oh, Flacco's the worst, let's get a new coach.
No.
Because the next coach is picking from the same crop. He's got to pick from the exact same crop. There has to be a huge change, a radical change. And don't worry, we're still really good. We still have certain things in place. Germany, on the men's side, when Pep Guardiola went to Barcelona and coached, not Barcelona, Bayern, and they got really good. Well, the Germans tried to adopt their style that Pep brought because it worked at club. The Germans lost their identity. We cannot lose our American identity. We're big, we're strong, we're fast, we're athletic, and now become soccer players. And if you have all of that, you will be unstoppable. The Germans lost their athleticism and their big strength. Sometimes they play the game and it's all about physical. They just overpower you. That doesn't always work because now the men are getting destroyed in Germany. But now it's not working for us. So but it's still, you just got to make little changes, which we can do.
Right. And it's okay. And it's okay. Like it's okay for teams to have off days and off cycles. And I think what we saw in this Portugal game was a lot of talented individuals. And that's good. But that's the responsibility of the federation to make those individuals come together and use that as their strength. Lindsey Horan is, in my opinion, the best soccer player on the field because of what she's been able to learn in her time in Europe. But she's surrounded by players who are a heck of a lot more athletic than she is. And how can we marry the two and make sure Lindsey Horan gets more athletic, but Alex Morgan gets more technical and Sophia Smith gets more technical? So going off of what you said, Scotty, is we can have that cohesiveness together.
I think a lot of times too, a lot of people think when we speak technical, and in terms of soccer, technical is dribbling. And that's just a one part of technical. The passing is technical training, knowing your, not just tactically your triangles and your diamonds, but when you watch Lyon play in Haran, man, they surround her so that she never gets in a spot where she physically has to dominate the game. She can only do that through strength. She can't do it through speed and quickness. It's not her game. Her game is strength. But then she has this great touch and great vision. And at Lyon, she is the thing that she's the connection. She's the link that connects it all. And they get around her. Our team, they look to run away from her. Lavelle looks to get forward. Morgan looks to get forward. Thompson looks to get forward. Smith, Rodman, Williams, they just look to go, and they're not like bink, 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 in and out, moving the ball, moving the defense, changing their shape, and then we attack. And the Portugal game was so eye-opening that Portugal played really good. They did.
Yeah.
They're the 21st best team in the world, and they did that to the number one team. Mm-hmm. They just made us look silly. And they're there's 20 teams in between us. Maybe not. Or maybe make a whole bunch of people number two and make us one or make us 2B.
Right.
They showed exactly what our weaknesses were. And if not only am I watching Sweden, but we got to rewatch us too. Because Sweden's going to watch us, and they're going to know, look, Ireland did it. Wales did it. Vietnam did it. The Dutch did it really good, and Portugal did it even better than the Dutch. Thank God the Dutch didn't see Portugal play us first.
Yeah, that's a good question in the sense that I've been thinking about this. We tied Portugal 0-0, but if we had tied them 1-1 or 2-2, and we were able to show that we can score, I believe that would be a better scoreline than 0-0 because we would be able, and I think that's fair to say, and everyone would agree with that. It's just the fact that we weren't able to score against Portugal is concerning, and moving forward, that's something that has to be addressed. And in Vlatko Ananovsky's post-game press conference, the biggest thing that stood out to me and what he said when he was asked about the team and everything and the way that it was handled and the style, he said, I've never seen this team step on the field and not try harder and not compete. Everyone is entitled to an opinion and they can say whatever they want, but I just know how this team feels. I believe that Vlatko Andonovski has his way of addressing media. He doesn't want to get too in the weeds, that other coaches don't have any problem getting in the weeds. But when you say that you've never seen this team step on the field and not try harder, that is concerning as a United States fan if that's what the head coach believes that he saw out of his team against Portugal. A lot of things could have been better. And I think a lot of moments they could have tried a lot harder, and we didn't see that. And the coach isn't going to address that. What's happening behind closed doors, and how are conversations different between coaches and players, or players and players? It's just, I would love to be a fly on the wall right now, because after he said that, that made me go, what? Like, are you kidding? Heck yeah, we could have tried a lot harder.
My response to Vlatko is, one, I think that was him referring to what somebody said, what Carly Lloyd had said, correct?
Correct. A reporter had asked a question of what actually, take that back. The reporter told Vlatko what Carly Lloyd and Alexia Lawless said about the autographs and, how the team's response to the tie. And he said, that's insane that we don't have, that they think that about us. And then he went on to say that quote.
Okay. So, and again, you're right. I'd like to be a fly on the wall too, but just watching him, this whole journey in a sense, I'm not saying he's lying to us. Like, I don't know that we could have tried harder.
You don't think
we could have been way smarter? We just keep running into the wall. Like, listen, we're not gonna knock the wall.
But isn't that trying harder? Is thinking? Like, that's an aspect of
I'm saying. Like, he took it as their effort.
Sure. Okay.
He took it as solely effort because he knew where it was coming from also. And she was, like I said, I think Carly Lloyd had a bad finish with players, not just her not playing in as much as in the last World Cup, not being the superstar. I think she had a bad sending off. There was a bad taste in her mouth. And now she's throwing it back. Like, the one comment she made that they didn't talk about, but about how winning isn't the most important thing. It's the things that winning got us has now become more important than the winning. Listen, she's throwing that right at Rapinoe, 100%. Like, I can't think of any, maybe Morgan, but not these young kids. They weren't here. They weren't there. They didn't win anything yet. So they don't have it. As far as trying harder, I'm going back to youth. I'm going to stay on youth this whole time. I don't know how many of them got a trophy just for being in the stupid league. Like, we don't know how to try super hard and get into, and that's not everybody, but there's a lot of players that are on academy teams, GA teams, ECNL teams that are always on the team. Shoot, here in North Carolina, you don't even try out after you're like 13 years old. They just said, oh, we watch you all year and we doing this. Like, of course they can say that. Not every parent was at every game to watch every player, and they pretend like they were. And some of these coaches within the clubs don't even get along. So I don't want to hear it. But that's what I mean. Like, we've learned, like, I'm going to be on the national team. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Like, I cannot wait for the next coaching crew to come in and bring Ashley Hatch in and Sam Coffey in. Mm-hmm. These are going to be pit bulls on this field. Like, you're not going to want to practice against them. Like, because they have now tasted the bad taste. And a lot of these players haven't tasted the bad taste. And if they have, they haven't done it in a long time. Shoot, and nothing against her. She hasn't done anything wrong. But Alyssa Thompson, Nike signed her to $1 million. She's 16? Like, who does that? Like,
18.
Like, you got to fight for, like, go through a whole bunch of stuff. Like, that's what, to me, Spain is a little scary to me. England's a little scary to me. France is a little scary to me because they've been going through this nasty battle. Canada is going through it right now. Nigeria, the coach hasn't been paid in 2 months. Players haven't been paid in like a year, and they're fighting because they have something to fight for. It's not about the money. It's not about this. It's not about the notoriety. It's about the love of the game. And a lot of us don't get the love of the game because at the youth level, it's being given to us. So we think, hey, I stayed on the top team. I've done enough. I'm doing great. Because I always tell my young players, if you're on ECNL, Academy, GA, any of the young players I train, what's next? What's next if you're on the top team at your club? The national team. That's what comes next. Like, if you can make the top team at your club, you should hopefully have aspirations to be a national team player. That go through the process, the 15s, the 14s, the 15s, the 17s, the 20s, like, go through the process.
But how many of them have gone through the process and like, we're always on the team. We're always here. We always got picked. Always was the player that got called. Because even there, it's easy. It's easy. I don't want to make any, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. Let's just bring in the same crop of players we had the whole time, blah, blah, blah. The same thing at the club level. And it's a joke. Like, you need that competition. You need to fear for your spot. Every year you should have that sick feeling. Did I do enough this year in training? Have I trained enough? I got to show it. Make them do the tryout. What's a tryout? At the youth level, the tryouts like the World Cup. It's the biggest thing in their lives. It's the most pressure. It's more pressure than the state championship game is a tryout for their own club team to stay with their friends. And we don't even do tryouts anymore. It's ridiculous. And that's like, we look like in the World Cup, like, okay, here's some adversity. Let's see you get yourself out of it now. Well, we've always done this and it's always worked. It's not going to work. That worked somewhere else and at a lesser truth to it in a sense, because it's not just at your club where the best players aren't playing. It's the club you're playing against too. And I think that all ties into what we're watching right now.
Yeah, and I think all of this said about the U.S. team and the result against Portugal is the fact that we have a really high standard for this national team. A lot of talented players, a lot of players that we've watched at the club level for years now, and we know what they're capable of, and we aren't seeing it on the world stage. And a few small adjustments, they could get there in the round of 16. Before we go, I just want to touch on Alyssa Thompson because you made a good point. Leading up to this World Cup, Mallory Swanson was a player that everyone had their eyes on. And we had managed to put ourselves in a position where we felt like she was our opportunity to win. And she was our biggest threat. And we just had to go Mal Swanson, Mal Swanson. She gets injured and we have Alyssa Thompson come in. We don't change our tactics. We allow an 18-year-old who's hasn't had a ton of experience in a professional setting, let alone a World Cup, and around these players to come in and potentially fill that role. And that just shows the difference in the United States and what Australia has been able to do without Sam Kerr and the group stage games. Is these other countries have been in a position before where they've had to make adjustments, maybe not get the results, but they've made adjustments. United States haven't been in that position before. And I think this is a good thing for the Federation. Is now we have to hold ourselves to a standard. We see that the things we used to be able to do aren't what we're going to be able to do moving forward. All that said, we expect Sweden to be the opponent into the round of 16 on Saturday. It's a 5 a.m. Eastern time kick. So, Scotty, I assume you're going to go to bed and wake up for that one, right?
Yes.
Okay. Love that for you. And the last time that Sweden and the U.S. played was a friendly in 2021. It was a 1-1 tie, and Rapinoe had a PK goal. So no run-of-play goals for the United States against Sweden. This will be an interesting opponent. By the time this episode airs, Sweden will have played Argentina. We're recording this on Tuesday afternoon.
I was going to say two things. One with Swanson.
Yeah.
It's funny that she was playing so good because if we all recall, she was the one left off the prior trips, the big trip. So like she had this hunger, she had this desire. Now, even with her playing as good as she was, if she doesn't get injured, I'm pretty sure everybody was watching us and we still played the very same way. So there would have been help defensively. They would have done what they're doing now. Now, would it have worked as well? Because she was so on top of her game and so well, playing so well at the time. So the last thing I'll say is that you said, if you listen to a lot of the players talk, coaches, players that have been around the national team, not Americans, the foreigners, they said the one thing back in the day when the Americans couldn't lose, mm-hmm. They all feared their mentality. It was they were just animals on the field. Like they knew they could do whatever it needed to win the game, to be the best. And now these teams say that's the one thing they had to get over. And now that they don't fear their attitudes, basically, their desire, now they always knew they could play with them. It was just like, they were just scared of who they were as people, basically. And I think that's what some of the older players are referring to. And that's where I'm saying they don't know any better. They've never had to work like you had, like the Mia Hamms and everything, even if that was they were the greatest. Soccer wasn't big in 99. They knew nothing of what they were going to walk into. They were trying to put this game on the map. They were trying to make women's soccer massive.
And I feel like maybe because we have done it so well already in the US and are a little bit ahead of, in a sense, of other countries, that we don't still have that fight to make this the greatest game. And I mean, like, if I was a woman, I'd be trying to make women's soccer the number one sport in the world. When I played soccer, I tried to make soccer the number one sport in America. Go back and watch me on tape. I knew that Deion Sanders was big. I knew the flamboyant Dennis Rodmans and those guys. And that's how I played soccer, because it brought people into the stands. And you needed to get eyes on us. Like, you have to realize that we have an opportunity to make this the greatest game of everything. And it can be women doing it, not the men's game, not the Messis, the women. And I think that's kind of, for us, the US, we kind of lost that hunger for that. And look what it got us. It got us Nike deals. It's got us Chevy deals. It's got us Volkswagen deals. It's got this. I got to go on Twitter. I got to do my commercials. And I think that I will always have a problem with. It wasn't who I was as a player. I wouldn't self-promote like that. I would do things on the field. I would do more camps. I would do stuff like that to promote the game and make it the greatest game of all time. And I think we're missing a huge opportunity in this World Cup as a United States.
Yeah, no, I think that's a completely fair point. And I think this is a huge opportunity for the US to realize what the effect this result against Portugal had. And hopefully moving forward, the United States can get back on track. We can see them in the final match and hopefully get a result. But at the same time, there's so many positives that you can take away from what is happening in this World Cup for the US right now. And, you know, the players that are taking the opportunities to get the commercials and make money off of the game, I have no qualms with either. I think that's great. If you see an opportunity to make money off of this game, but also still make sure that you're trying to grow this game and make it better than when you came in. If you can do both, why not? But I completely understand what you're saying. And I think the response to this World Cup and after the World Cup will be very interesting. The US has some games in the latter half of September. Who's going to be there? Who is Andonovski going to give opportunities to? We don't know. I think it's totally going to swing on what the result out of this World Cup will be. So with all of that said, we will be back next week, probably earlier on in the week. I have some games on Wednesday, so hopefully we'll get a new episode out on Monday reflecting on this round of 16 US game. So make sure to follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. That's going to be where we post everything about the next episode. You can follow us at SFTP Pod, and we will see you guys back here soon. Enjoy the rest of the group stage games in the World Cup.
Have a great week.